Welcome to the new My Football Club podcast. Hello and welcome to the new My Football Club podcast. I'm your host, Augustine Sasso. You can email me at augustine.sasso@myfootballclub.co.uk. Well, this is the Snowbound Show. I've got 2 interviews with Lord Charles. We recorded these while all those games were being postponed due to the snow. And if you haven't heard, the Fleet just keep rolling on despite the layoff. Last Saturday was another win, this time 3-1 against Hayes and Yetting in the FA Trophy. Now, back to the interviews. In these 2 interviews, Charles and I talk about the Kent Senior Cup game that would eventually be postponed, and we talk about the Fleet Academy. In the second interview, Charles gives us his exclusive on who he thinks the top Fleet players are so far. We talk about the football pitches and give thanks to Peter Norton for his pitch maintenance at Stonebridge Road.
Hello.
Hi Charles, it's Augustine.
Hey, how you doing?
All right. Is this a good time to talk?
Yes, indeedy.
All right, well, I guess we talk about the weather. There's nothing else to talk about.
Well, here in Britain, the weather is our national topic every day. It's something that you can always be relied upon to strike up a conversation with anybody if you ask them about the weather. It affects our lives so much, but we never seem ready for any kind of extreme conditions. And whilst you folks in America and Canada, you get plenty of snow in the winter, when we get one snowfall, the whole country seems to close down. And this weekend, I think we're going to see pretty much a wipeout in non-league football across the country. And indeed, games as far up as the Premiership are being affected, with Blackpool's big game against Manchester United being a victim this afternoon. So the weather's laid a deep white carpet across North Kent. And when I spoke to Peter Dansley earlier this week, the game against Thurrock was called off relatively early. It was fairly obvious it won't be able to take its place in the schedule on Saturday. I think there are at least 15 inches at the ground, if not more, on the pitch. And it's not just a case of clearing the pitch, it's also being able to make sure that the stadium is safe for people to get to, for fans to watch the game from the terraces or in the stands. And I think even the car park over at Eurostar, where people, many fans park their cars, I think that was under a deep layer of snow as well. So all things considered, the early decision to get the game called off was the right one. Although Peter did have some problems with the Blue Square hierarchy at their head office of the league, because he couldn't get a referee in of the right calibre to give the pitch inspection because nobody could move in North Kent. The roads were an absolute nightmare, but eventually they relented, and I think they allowed a local referee to call the game off.
Wow.
And that was a fairly foregone conclusion, and now we've got the next game on our schedule is away on Tuesday evening in the Kent Senior Cup. We're meant to be playing Maidstone in a game which is very interesting for Fleet fans, because Maidstone are now managed by the one-time Fleet and Gravesend and All-Fleet manager Andy Ford. But they play their games at Ashford Town in the east of the county. And, well, down there, they've got a history of games being called off because their pitch is either waterlogged or there's some other problem down there. And it may well be that Tuesday night's game is going to be called off fairly quickly unless the weather relents, because there's some talk on TV on the weather forecast tonight that there could be some rain over the weekend, but then the temperatures are going to plummet, which would mean the pitches everywhere will be frozen solid, and of course that will mean the game being postponed. Back to 1963. We were in the FA Cup and we were waiting to play Sunderland, and Stonebridge Road, and it was put off and put off, but we eventually got it on. We drew, and then we lost away at Roker Park. But it meant that because we started in the FA Cup that year, I think it was in August, in the extra preliminary round, it meant that we then had the record for staying in the FA Cup for the longest of any team ever. And I think we still hold that record because the later rounds were delayed because of the assays that descended on English football.
Wow.
So that was the last time. It was as bad as this, but let's hope that this spell doesn't last as long.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just thinking back to as recent as 2 years ago, where the fixture congestion was really hard, and but we kind of persevered. That was a little different. We also had injuries. This time, you're right. We picked up a head of steam, and there are other clubs that are not playing either. So we're in the same boat with other clubs.
I think you're right. I think some clubs like Dover, still involved in the FA Cup, they could suffer with any cancellations. Their fixtures are backing up because they're not involved in league games because they've got this fantastic FA Cup adventure, and they could find that that's going to be a problem for them. But certainly Liam and the team, they don't want any games cancelled now. Because A, they don't want the congestion, and B, because we've been playing so well. So the sooner we can get back to, turning out on lush green grass, the better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What's interesting though is that, to anybody listening to this from outside the UK, is that pretty much this is unusual conditions for us, because we don't normally see snow coming until around about February time. And to get snow coming at the end of November, beginning of December, is really unusual. So it makes you wonder if we got a lot more to come later in the season.
Yeah, well, let's hope not.
I agree.
Yeah. So it seems like the next game is going to be, I'm looking at the schedule.
It should be the home game in the FA Trophy against Payson Yedding. Now, even that game, a week on Saturday, December the 11th, which happens to be my birthday, I'm hoping it takes place because it would be a great birthday present if the guys can win that one against the side that are still in the Blue Square Premier. And I think there's some danger, depending on whether the temperatures rise and the snow thaws and the ice thaws. There must be some question marks over whether that game actually goes ahead. Even though it's a week away, we really do need the temperatures to go up and not stay down, which is what they're going to be over the weekend.
Wow. Yeah, well, that's good then. But let's hope for the best, And,
absolutely. I think what we would rather is have this weather now than over the Christmas period. When, of course, we've got that massive game on the 28th of December at Stonebridge Road when the Fleet entertain Dartford, which, is the first time they've played on equal terms in a league game at Stonebridge Road for many, many years. And, of course, it's the first time the club, as Ed Fleet United, will have entertained Dartford, because all previous encounters at Stonebridge Road in league games have been Gravesend and Northfleet. And it's one of those that I think everybody in North Kent is getting excited about already.
Yeah. And for me, the Christmas games, just the 4 games they play in 10 days, it's an interesting and fascinating part of the culture, and it happens at all levels.
It quite often sorts out a lot of issues in that congested period. I mean, last year, what was bizarre was the Fleet played Grays twice over Christmas. They won both games, but the Fleet still got relegated. Grays, of course, they pretty much went out of business at this level of football and have dropped down several divisions. With Chester going out of the league, Grays finished bottom of the table. But even those 2 wins against Grays couldn't save the Fleet last year. And we also had a horrendous game over Christmas against Hayes and Yedding away, and it was one of the worst performances I've ever seen. And I think, to play them in the trophy next week, it would be a good chance for a few of those memories to be erased and hopefully get one over against Hayes. We're not having the greatest of seasons in the Blue Square Premier, it has to be said.
Yeah. Well, I want to change the subject a little bit. I was looking at the reports for the youth teams and the academy and the reserve teams, and I noticed some names that were on the academy roster, the Fleet Academy that just had a great run in the Cup, and then I saw them playing in the reserves. So I know what the reserves are, the team. So that those are the players that have to get back into shape and fit. But it was interesting to see what I'm assuming are young players, and I'll give you the names. I don't know anything about them. I don't know if you do. Adam Williams, Lana Aziz. I don't know. It seems like, well, I should get more information on them, but it seems like, these are good young players, but they're getting experience against the reserves.
Well, because it's typical of the way players develop at our level. And certainly going back, a couple of years, this is the way that John Akindi and Luke Moore were eased up the food chain towards the first team. And, it's one thing playing youth football, but, it's another thing altogether playing against experienced players. And in the reserves, at least you get a certain amount of experienced players appearing on both sides. But more and more, because clubs don't carry very big squads, the reserve games are generally, as you say, for first team players coming back after injury or suspension, but they're used more and more to give young players some experience above the youth level, because the youth level sees them playing against boys of the same age. But the real test is when they come up against, quite frankly, guys in their early 20s who may have had a few league games under their belt and they've got a bit more experience.